The Galactic Council had made their decision with cold precision. Ellen Ward's crime was unprecedented. She had refused to surrender Earth's coordinates during the Resource Integration Protocol. For this defiance, the Council invoked an ancient punishment reserved for the most stubborn species, one designed to break not just the individual, but the entire genetic line. They would take her cubs, Rook and Tivy, barely 7 standard cycles old, would be dropped into the wilderness nests of Vrakan predators on the prison moon of Ket 7. The Vrakan were apex hunters, scaled monstrosities with crystalline teeth and territorial instincts so fierce they consumed their own weakest young. No species had ever survived this sentence. The cubs would be devoured within hours, and Ellen Ward would spend her remaining days knowing she had condemned her children to become prey. The Council expected screams. They expected begging. Instead, Ellen Ward smiled a strange, unsettling expression that made even the insectoid Judge Arbiter's antennae twitch with uncertainty. "You've made a mistake," she said simply. The drop pods opened with hydraulic hisses, depositing Rook and Tivy onto the acidic soil of Ket 7. The twin suns beat down mercilessly as the pods rocketed back toward orbit, leaving the children alone in a landscape of jagged rocks and steaming vents. 300 meters away, a Vrakan nest towered, a structure of bones, dried sinew, and territorial markings that reeked of death. Tivy, the younger of the two, clutched her brother's hand. "Rook, I'm scared." Rook squeezed back, his jaw set in that stubborn way that reminded observers of their mother. "Remember what Mom taught us. We're wards. We adapt." The Vrakan matriarch detected them immediately. She emerged from the nest entrance, 12 feet of corded muscle and predatory grace. Her offspring, 6 juveniles, hissing behind her. The monitoring drones hovering overhead transmitted the scene across 73 council worlds. Millions watched, waiting for the inevitable carnage. The matriarch charged. Rook didn't run. Instead, he stepped forward, placing himself between Tivy and the creature. He raised his hands, not in surrender, but in the universal gesture his mother had drilled into them during their nights, learning about Earth's extinct megafauna. "Big," he said in the clicking trade tongue, his child's voice somehow steady, strong, respected. The matriarch skidded to a halt, confused. Prey didn't speak. Prey ran. Tivy emerged from behind her brother. And what she did next would be studied by xenobiologists for generations. She began to hum a low, rhythmic sound that humans had once used to soothe infants and tame wolves. The Vrakan juveniles, curious and not yet fully imprinted with hunting instincts, crept closer. By the 3rd day, the Council's monitoring feeds showed something impossible. The Vrakan juveniles were following Rook and Tivy everywhere. The human cubs had discovered that the young predators responded to play, a concept the Vrakan species had no word for. Rook fashioned crude toys from rocks and bone fragments, teaching the juveniles to chase and retrieve. Tivy discovered they could be calmed by touch, her small hands somehow finding the pressure points behind their crystalline crests that made them rumble with contentment. The matriarch watched with what the translation AI could only describe as bewilderment. By the 7th day, Rook had organized the juveniles into a hunting pack with him as the alpha. He taught them coordinated strategies, flanking maneuvers, and patience. Concepts that would have taken Vrakan years to develop instinctually, the human cub imparted through games and repetition. The juveniles began bringing him kills, laying them at his feet in displays of submission. Tivy, meanwhile, had started teaching them to share. When one juvenile hoarded food, she simply took it and distributed it evenly, scolding in a tone that somehow transcended species. The juvenile, 3 times her size, and perfectly capable of swallowing her whole, lowered its head in shame. The matriarch, apex predator of Ket 7, began bringing food to the human cubs. By the 30th day, the situation had escalated beyond council protocols. The Vrakan nest was no longer just a nest, it was a compound. Rook had engineered primitive shelters using the juveniles as construction labor, their strength guided by his planning. Tivy had established a routine of grooming and health checks, having identified parasites that plagued the predators, and invented crude removal methods using thorns and patience. The juveniles no longer saw themselves as predators in training. They saw themselves as Rook and Tivi's pack. And the pack protected its own. When a rival Vrakan adult attempted to raid the nest, the juveniles fought with unprecedented coordination, using tactics that should have been beyond their developmental stage. They won. The matriarch, watching her offspring defend the human cubs with suicidal bravery, made a choice that would alter Vrakan society forever. She bent her massive head to Rook and rumbled the sound that meant Alpha. The council convened an emergency session on the 60th day. The feeds from Ket 7 showed an impossibility. A Vrakan matriarch bowing to a human child who barely reached her foreleg. Tivi sat braiding some form of decoration into a juvenile's crest while it purred a sound Vrakan were not supposed to make. The nest had expanded, incorporating 2 other Vrakan families who had been, for lack of a better word, recruited by the juveniles. "Retrieve them," the judge-arbiter commanded. Immediately. But when the retrieval team landed, they found themselves surrounded by 47 Vrakan of various ages, all positioned defensively around 2 human children. Rook stood at the front, one hand on the matriarch's flank, his expression calm. "We're not leaving," he said. "This is our pack now." Tivi nodded, a juvenile nuzzling her shoulder. "They need us." Ellen Ward was released from custody by council decree 3 days later. All charges dropped. When the diplomatic shuttle delivered her to Ket 7, she found her children had built something extraordinary. A society where predator and prey existed, not in balance, but in partnership. Rook ran to her, followed by a train of Vrakan juveniles who regarded her with curious, intelligent eyes. "Mom, look what we made!" Tivi hugged her waist. "Can we keep them?" Ellen Ward looked at the impossible scene before her, at the Vrakan matriarch, who watched her with something approaching respect, at the cubs both human and alien, who had rewritten the rules of nature through sheer, stubborn compassion. She thought about the council's certainty that her children would be consumed, about their fundamental misunderstanding of what made humans dangerous. They had dropped human cubs in predator nests, expecting nature to take its course. They had forgotten that humans had spent millennia taking wolves and making them into dogs, taking wildcats and making them into companions, taking the most dangerous creatures of their world and teaching them to love. The predators hadn't consumed the cubs had fostered the predators, and that, Ellen Ward knew, was far more terrifying.